Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that pretty much all of us do every single day. And a lot of times, we don't even think about it. It's called code switching. And, while it might seem simple on the surface, it's also a hidden language of power. I mean, really think about it for a second. Have you ever, say, dialed up the formality with your boss, then used completely different slang with your friends? Or maybe changed your whole vibe when you're visiting family? Yeah, of course you have. That simple act of tweaking who you are for your audience, well, that's code switching in a nutshell.
But here's the thing, and this is really important. Code switching isn't just about the words you use. Nope, it's the whole package. We're talking about shifting your dialect, your body language, your manners, your entire behavior. It's all about navigating different social worlds, and for some people, it's a fundamental part of just getting through the day.
Okay, so let's get into our first big idea here. For a lot of people, especially young folks who are juggling multiple cultures, code switching isn't just some neat party trick. It's an absolutely essential skill for survival and for success. For bicultural youth, like those from immigrant or refugee families, life is this constant high-wire balancing act. You've got your world at home, the world at school, and the world with your friends. To really make it, they build up this incredible bicultural toolkit. They become total experts, not just in different languages, but in different cultural rules and social cues. They develop what's called a role repertoire, which is just a fancy way of saying they know exactly which self to be and when.
In the research on this, it's crystal clear. It shows that the young people who master this balance, the ones who can move fluently between their home culture and their new one, they actually have the best, healthiest outcomes. It's a true sign of incredible resilience. But, and this is a big but, there's a flip side to this skill, and it has everything to do with power.
So, if it's such a valuable skill, what's the big deal? Where does the conflict come in? Well, that brings us right to our second point: power. What happens when code switching isn't a choice you make, but a demand that's placed on you? What happens when one group gets to decide what the right way to talk and act is for everybody?
And this is where things get really tense. From the perspective of a dominant culture, seeing someone switch between different codes can feel off. Maybe inauthentic, improper, even threatening, because their way is seen as the default, the standard. But for people from marginalized groups, adapting isn't some casual choice. It's a constant, exhausting necessity just to be accepted, to feel safe, or frankly, to even be heard in the first place. When you lay it all out like this, the imbalance is just stark. The dominant group, they almost never have to adapt. They're the ones setting the rules of the game. Meanwhile, minority groups are the ones constantly forced to switch, carrying this really heavy social and psychological burden. This isn't a two-way street, not at all. The pressure to adapt flows almost exclusively in one direction, from the marginalized to the powerful.
Which naturally leads us to the absolute core question of this whole explainer. Is this power dynamic, this setup where one group dictates how everyone else has to communicate, is it permanent? Is it just set in stone? Or is it possible to flip the script?
Well, this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Because some cultures are starting to do exactly that. They are flipping the script. They're actually reversing this centuries-old power dynamic. The research points to two incredibly powerful examples of this happening right now: Indigenous cultures, especially in places like Canada, and African American cultures in the United States. What's so amazing is that both groups are using their deep histories and their moral authority to make the dominant culture do something it almost never has to do: learn their code. So how are they actually pulling this off? Let's break down the specific strategies they're using. They're basically writing a brand new playbook for how to challenge cultural dominance. Take Indigenous groups. They're weaving their own protocols right into the fabric of mainstream institutions. I mean, think about land acknowledgements before public events, or the massive legal and political shifts coming from things like Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. Through really powerful activism, they are fundamentally changing the entire conversation, forcing non-Indigenous people to learn new vocabularies, new histories, and new ways of being respectful just to participate in public life. And then you have African American culture, which has this immense cultural influence.
Through music, fashion, and language, like African American Vernacular English or AAVE, it sets trends that the mainstream has to learn to stay relevant. At the same time, political movements like Black Lives Matter have completely reshaped the language of social justice, forcing terms like systemic racism or microaggressions into boardrooms and political debates. To be seen as a credible ally now, you have to learn the code.
Now, of course, when you start reversing a power dynamic like this, it's not always going to be comfortable for the dominant culture. You see pushback, you see resentment. But that backlash, that's actually a key indicator. It's the proof that the old power structure is being genuinely challenged and forced to change.
So when you put it all together, what do you get? You get a powerful, actionable model for shifting power. It's about centering your own culture, setting the terms of the conversation, using your influence, and framing your demands with moral authority. It's a playbook for forcing adaptation to go in the other direction. And that, right there, is the biggest takeaway. What started as a tool just for survival is being transformed, literally, into an instrument for profound social change. These examples are creating a blueprint for other marginalized groups on how to turn that one-way street of adaptation into a two-way bridge of understanding. So, we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What does a world actually look like when everyone is expected to code switch? When the burden of understanding is shared by all of us, and adapting is no longer a demand we place on a few, but a skill we require of everyone. It's a future that is definitely worth thinking about. Thanks for joining The Explainer.